Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sackur. In the United States, the sheriff has always had a special status as the defender of the community, the embodiment of law, justice, and the American way. But sheriffs can be politically controversial figures too. None more so than my guest today, Joe Arpaio, sheriff of Maricopa County, Arizona for 24 years until last year. A self-styled tough guy convicted of criminal contempt and controversially pardoned by President Donald Trump just 2 months ago. Did Joe Arpaio betray the American values he pledged to uphold? Joe Arpaio in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to Hard Talk.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the show. Of course, you are no longer wearing the sheriff's badge after almost a quarter of a century. Is it now time, do you think, for you to acknowledge the mistakes you made while in office?
Well, you know, I'm a big Frank Sinatra, My Way, the song. And it always says regrets. I've had a few, but too few to mention. So if you talk about mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. And by the way, I want to thank your country because you mentioned the elected sheriff, which originated years and years ago, and you know, came into the United States, the Western sheriff. We now have 3,000, and chief law enforcement officer for the county. So I'm very proud to have spent that 24 years serving the people. And
no one would doubt your success in terms of re-elections. I believe you were re-elected 5 times. But let us be honest, nobody in Maricopa County chose you, elected you to violate the Constitution. But that is clearly what you ended up doing. And I'm just wondering whether you're prepared to say sorry for that now.
Well, I did not violate the Constitution. That's an issue that a judge decided to repeat or report during a trial. So we are appealing that. This is a misdemeanor, same time you can get for barking dogs. It took 8 years when Obama and the Attorney General, former Holder, went after me after 60 days taking over. Here we are at the end on a misdemeanor, a contempt of court, and this chapter is not over yet, believe me, because the truth will come out very soon.
Right, but when you suggest to me that there's something political at the heart of this, I would simply reply to you that the key judgment in your case was surely that from the district court in 2013 handed down by Judge Murray Snow, who is a known conservative appointed to his post by George W. Bush. And he is the one who concluded that the evidence clearly demonstrates that your office, the sheriff's office in Maricopa County, specifically equated being an Hispanic or Mexican laborer with being an unauthorized alien. And that, in his view, was unconstitutional.
Well, in that 2013, after that, there was no violation. Prior to that, we had the authority under the U.S. government to act as immigration officers. So that was his decision. And then he wanted to make sure that he would do everything to get me out of office, according to his wife. And there's so much involved in this that I'm not going to talk about it now, but you'll be hearing about it, the real story about the judicial system and how they went after this sheriff. Took him 8 years on a contempt of court, a small crime.
Well, hang on a minute, Sheriff. If I can still call you Sheriff, because you had 24 years at it, so I think I can. Hang on a minute. As the chief lawman in Maricopa County, I can't imagine what possessed you to consistently flout the order of a court and to end up in contempt. I mean, you were the lawman. How could you defy the authority of a court?
First of all, there was no intention. That's a civil case you're talking about with Snow. The conviction had to do a criminal misdemeanor charge. Think of that. And one judge refused to give me a jury. Wrong charge. I can go on and on a contempt of court. It had nothing to do with racial profile or anything regarding the profile, and if you want to call it that.
Well, I do, if I may, I do want to call it. That's what I was
convicted of.
I do want to call it profiling, because at the heart of this case, for those who don't know, is the orders you gave to your men to specifically target Latinos when it came to police stops on the basis that you were looking for, it seems, illegal immigrants in a way that the courts decided was completely in contravention of the Constitution, as I've said. I mean, the bottom line is many people in your own county saw your activities as fundamentally racist.
Well, that's not true when you say in the county. By the way, I keep getting reelected, so evidently the people feel that I'm doing the job and defending them and going after the criminals. I'm not going to get into everything on this case, but let me say this. We had the authority under the federal government to act as immigration officer. We don't just pick up people on the street because of the color of their skin. When you arrest people on any charge and they happen to be here illegally, of course, we would turn them over to the government where they would, in most cases, be deported. So I'm not going to keep talking about this case because it's not over yet. I am appealing this misdemeanor conviction of contempt of court, and then I will be speaking out so you and everybody else will know how our judicial system is somewhat corrupt. When you mention the judge was conservative, appointed by Bush, actually that was at the tail end, recommended by a certain U.S. senator. So I don't care.
Well,
judges make their own decisions.
The point surely is this. You have a criminal record now. You say you're appealing, and of course you have been pardoned. But I want to get to the heart of the matter, which is the impact of that pardon that was issued by Donald Trump a couple of months ago. Did you see that as payback for the staunch support that you gave to Donald Trump from the very beginning of his campaign?
I did not ask for the pardon. He decided to do it when he heard the facts of this case. And I welcome that pardon. I was with him from day one, July 2015, and I'll be with him to the end. Had nothing to do with the pardon. And that was the right thing he did. I'm not guilty, and I will continue to fight. You said I have a criminal record. Well, I do have a criminal record because of the latest decision of another judge on that contempt of court. So we'll appeal that.
Have you
but the
paused?
Pardon is there.
Yeah, sure. Have you paused for a second to consider the impact of that pardon on some of the people who were victimized by your officers during that period when you were the sheriff of Maricopa County? How do you think they feel about your pardon?
Well, I don't know how they feel. There's certain open border or those that believe that people can come into this country illegally and get by with it. So maybe we should also look at all those hundreds and thousands that have violated the Constitution, have come into this country illegally with a high percentage committing other crimes. And look at that. When you say wait a minute. When you say how the victims feel, where are all the victims? Well, I didn't see any victims go to court.
I'll tell you about one victim. I'll tell you about one victim, Don Magos. He lives in Phoenix. He was a plaintiff in the ACLU class action lawsuit against Maricopa County. And this is what he said after you were pardoned. These are powerful words. He said, "By pardoning him, that is you, Trump is saying to the nation that it is okay to insult another race or another culture. Instead of making America great, Trump is making America a lot more divided, just like Joe Arpaio did here in Phoenix.
Well, when you talk about one person or two people that complain, I'm not going to get into that case on a probable cause. But when you have one or two, where is the uproar? Where are all the victims not even appearing in court?
Well,
testifying.
Right,
we haven't found any victims.
You want more? I'll give you more. The mayor of Phoenix, you know what he said after the pardon? He says, this pardon of Arpaio is a slap in the face to the people of Maricopa County, especially the Latino community and all those he victimized systematically and illegally, violating their civil rights.
Well, that's the mayor that's running for office. This is all politics with him speaking out. And he ought to worry about his police department enforcing the law, which the Supreme Court said we can do, all law enforcement. So I'm not going to get into the mayor where he's speaking out right now since he wants to run for Congress. So, you know, you're picking out a couple people to make their statements for political reasons without knowing all the facts. Now, I'm not blaming you for that.
Well,
yeah,
thanks for not blaming me. I mean, as you may recall, I came to visit you actually a few years ago in Maricopa County, and you very kindly showed me around some of your installations, including the tent city. And again, I put this point to you. Now that you're no longer sheriff and you're not wearing the badge, maybe you can reflect a little bit on some of the things you did. I mean, for example, in 2008, you were caught on video referring to your tent city as a, quote, concentration camp. I guess you must regret that now.
No, I don't regret it. I made one statement when I was leaving the Italian-American Club, and there's a crowd of demonstrators, because everywhere I go, we have demonstrators.
When you know that there are many critics of yours in your own county who feel that your record is racist, to refer to your own initiative, the tent city, where more than 1,000 prisoners were kept in, sometimes in the summer, 130-degree Fahrenheit heat, to refer to that as a concentration camp does raise serious questions about your judgment, if nothing else.
Well, let me tell you, I'm very proud of the tent city. Started that 24 years ago. It's been a great program, a great deterrence, because many, many people do not violate the law here because they do not want to end up in tent city. And let me say this, including your country and our country, fighting our soldiers fighting for our countries, and they're living in tents. So when you're going to complain about convicted, they are all convicted, serving some time in tent city. Yeah. And we haven't had that many problems. One of the greatest programs in this country. So a lot of people don't like it, but still, I still get people to thank me about it. They're criminals.
If I may say so, you have had a lot of problems. You had a Justice Department investigation which found serious problems, including Latina detainees in your system being denied basic sanitary items, being put into solitary confinement for extended periods of time just because of their inability to understand English. And you also had an extraordinary rate of suicides in your jails, which outstripped anything that I could find when I looked through the record of big cities like LA, New York, Chicago. The amount of suicides as a proportion of overall deaths in your jail system was truly extraordinary, 24%. Why do you think that was?
That's all wrong. You are reading from other periodicals. No, you are way off base on what you are. We haven't had 24% suicides. We run a safe jail system, and I'm going to tell you another thing. Probably the safest jail system in the country when you really analyze the truth and statistical stats.
Well, I'm quoting you stats that come from various official departments. I'm not saying 24% of all prisoners. I'm saying 24% of those deaths in your jails were deemed to be suicides. Are you denying that?
Yes, I am denying that. Of course I am. Now, if you have 5 deaths, now they say 200-300 people have died or are suing me. That's not true. So the Justice Department did look into it on English in the jails. We alleviated that problem. So if it's so bad, if it was so bad, in 24 years. How come I've never been charged with anything? Think of that.
Well, I
They've
mean,
been after me for
you have
years.
been charged with something. We've already been through that already. I mean,
no, that's a contempt of court.
No, I understand that.
That is a contempt of court. Has nothing to do with any charges, criminal charges. That was a contempt of court because a judge said we did not follow his order. That is the only charge in 24 years, and it's a misdemeanor.
Do you happen to know how much the various lawsuits and payouts that were given during your regime as sheriff over 24 years, how much it amounted to that in the end came down to the tab of the Maricopa County taxpayers and the Arizona taxpayers? Do you know what the sum was?
I would say maybe $100 million.
Yeah, they reckon $140 million.
Okay, you divide that up with 24 years, we will put our record against any law enforcement agency in this country. So this is very difficult to get the story and the true facts out. Now you're hitting me with all these questions. Unfortunately, you don't have the right information, but that's okay. Well, I'm glad to talk to you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to talk to you too. I mean, the thing is, Sheriff, you did deliberately adopt a high profile. You styled yourself the toughest sheriff in the United States of America, but you also took stands on other issues which, frankly, were nothing to do with Maricopa County at all, one of which was your adamant insistence that Barack Obama was not a genuine American. You were one of the birthers who questioned the validity of his passport and his citizenship.
No. Once again, you are wrong. I never questioned where he was born. From day one, I said we are going to investigate a false government document. I don't care where he came from. It's a false birth certificate official document.
Yeah,
so let's get that story. Let's get that story straight.
Well, not so long ago, you and your staff came out with your findings, as you put it, from a 5-year investigation, which you say proved Obama's birth certificate was a fake. You talked about 9 different points of forgery on the document. My question really is, why was the sheriff of Maricopa County doing this?
Because the people of this county came to me, wanted me to look into the investigation, since the federal government or no one would develop and look into that investigation, and it had to do with the election process, which people do vote in this county too for presidents of the United States. So I took this on strictly to go after someone with a false government document. That was day one. It stays today, and I'm not done with that yet.
Would you style yourself a Republican? Are you a member of the Republican Party?
Yes, I am.
Why do you think
What
it is?
difference does that make?
Well, it's just interesting to me, because if we're going to talk about your political impact, and I think we have to, because you've chosen to be such a high-profile figure, why is it that so many fellow Republicans of the highest profile, including your local Senator John McCain, the Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, John Kasich, who also ran for president and may do so again, all of them have condemned you, and in particular condemned Donald Trump for pardoning you?
Well, that's the political situation. You named 3 or 4 that don't like the president, okay? But what about everybody else that supports me on a pardon? The people of this country support me. So you got a few politicians that hate the president and will say anything to embarrass the president. So let them do it.
It just strikes me that there may be something a little deeper than that going on. Is it not possible that a lot of Republicans look at you and your profile, your message and your impact, and they see someone who is toxic to their efforts to reach out to minority voters, but in particular to the growing, very fast-growing Latino population of the United States of America?
Well, I don't know, but you say Republicans. I'll tell you, 4 presidential candidates visited the tents. They love the tent city. I have great support. People come to me every time people run for president, including 2012. They come to me. including this time around, they want my endorsement. So evidently the Republican Party still want my endorsement, even after this misdemeanor conviction. They still want my endorsement when they run for office.
Let me just quote you Mike Madrid. He's a Republican political consultant of long standing in California. After you very recently went to a fundraiser event in Fresno, I believe it was just a month or so ago, this is what Mike Madrid said. He said, "It is an unmitigated disaster." He meant having Arpaio in his neighborhood. He said, "It's beyond belief that a man convicted of racial profiling is held up as an iconic figure in the party of Reagan and Abraham Lincoln."
Well, you talk about one individual. You're not talking about the 300 Republicans that showed up to hear me speak. So you can quote one or two people all you want. The majority of the Republicans support me.
Because you are a committed Republican, how do you believe the Republican Party is going to reach out to this demographic, the Latino community, which even in your own state of Arizona is growing exponentially? They reckon that by 2023, minorities will be the majority in your own home state of Arizona. You Republicans need to address that, don't you? And it seems to me you're not addressing it at all.
Well, you know, I'm a law enforcement guy. I spent 55 years, including working in England and Turkey as the head of the federal U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Mexico City, I was a director. South America, Texas, Arizona, in my other hat that nobody talks about, the federal hat. But I'm not here. I'm an equal opportunity law enforcement guy. I lock everybody up. I don't care if they're Republicans, Democrats, whatever. I enforce the laws. Now, naturally, when you run for sheriff, you have to be a politician to get elected. You have to do that. You have to wear that hat, too. But with my 55 years, I don't care who they are, or what status they have, what nationality. I enforce the laws. That's the way I've been doing it.
Before we end, we're almost out of time. I just need a thought from you on your friend Donald Trump, who just pardoned you. The latest Gallup poll, I've just seen it, suggests his approval rating is at 35%. It's pretty much as low as it's ever been. His approval rating 35%. His disapproval rating 60%. George W. Bush the other day said this of the times we are living in Trump's America. "Bigotry seems emboldened," he said. "Our politics more vulnerable to conspiracy theory and outright fabrication. Bigotry in any form," that's former President Bush said, "is blasphemy against the American creed." He is very worried about Trump's America. Are you?
Well, first of all, I was a campaign guy, honorary for Bush and Mitt Romney, Rick Perry. So you say his so-called polls have him at 33%. He's still higher than your profession, the media, and he's still higher than Congress. So I think the president's doing pretty good.
But address my point, particularly with regard to what George W. Bush said about bigotry right now in America seeming emboldened. Are you worried about what you see from the White House and what the tone of Trump's America is?
No, I'm not worried about it. Let me say this. My mother and father came here from Italy, legally, of course, and immigrants made this country great, and that will continue. But they must come across into our country legally, not illegally. And that's the whole question now. That's the fight that's been going on. So it's great. Let them keep coming into our country, but do it legally.
Sheriff Joe Arpaio, we have to end there, but I thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you.